Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Myanmar is the country where Chinese President Xi Jinping paid his first overseas visit this year. With 2020 being set aside as the China-Myanmar Year of Cultural Tourism, it's hoped this can encourage people on both sides of the border to learn more about their next-door neighbor. CTN Nicole Nge has more.
Neighbours wishing each other well, highlighting their warm and abiding friendship, and one which continues to benefit both parties in many ways.
We know the Belt and Road Initiative is not only for China's own development, but also for developing countries' economic growth. We support a sincere proposal. This is a great opportunity for our country.
Especially the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. Some future projects will provide our college students with more jobs and future space for development.
Sai Kampan is pursuing a master's degree in China's Yunnan Normal University. He feels quite excited about President Xi's visit to his country. 9 years ago, he attended an exchange event in Beijing and listened to Xi speak at the Great Hall of the People. Now he says the Chinese president's proposals are perfectly aligned with Myanmar's traditional culture.
A community with a shared future for mankind seeks mutual benefits through consultation and collaboration. In Myanmar, we call it auspiciousness, which means mutual benefits. I've benefited from studying in China, and I hope more people enjoy similar benefits like me.
Besides economic cooperation and cultural exchanges, the sides are looking to give fresh impetus to another key industry.
President Xi's visit will definitely boost the two countries' tourism. Our federation is working on it. We plan to continue our roadshow in Beijing, Shanghai, and other cities not familiar with Myanmar.
With 2020 being set aside as the China-Myanmar Year of Cultural Tourism, it's hoped this can encourage people on both sides of the border to learn more about their next-door neighbour. Nicole Ng, CGTN.
The number of cases of snakes invading homes in Bangkok has soared by thousands in recent years. Thailand is home to as many as 60 different species of snakes, and a third are venomous. And many people are turning to firefighters for help, who are facing more calls for snakes than burning buildings. CTN Dustia Saukawa reports.
It's a job not for the faint of heart. Pinyo Pukpinyo knew being a firefighter meant he would be able to save lives. He didn't expect the job description to ever involve snakes. Distress calls to his fire station are now of a different kind. This fire department rarely receives a call for a fire, but catching a slithery foe, there's a 24-hour hotline. He rushes to the scene and enters the house. There it was, a 2-meter python on the roof of the chicken coop. He catches it with his bare hands and puts the snake in a rice bag.
I came home. As usual, I went to feed the chickens. Before I feed them, I use a flashlight to see if there are any snakes, because I find them often. Today, I found one on the roof.
This homeowner says snakes are regular visitors to her house. She's called the fire station over 20 times for snake invasions. Minutes later, another call. As expected, it was not a fire.
In 1 month, we get less than 5 calls for fires, but for snakes, we get around 20 calls a day. That's around 600 each month.
In 2018, about 37,000 snake intrusions were reported around Bangkok, an exponential increase from 29,000 in 2016.
Bangkok was built on marshy land, a breeding ground for snakes and other reptiles. And as this sprawling city of more than 8 million people continues to expand into wild lands, the number of snake encounters is rising. They're not invading our territory, we are invading theirs.
About 70% of calls are to remove pythons, followed by cobras, vipers and kraits, the last three highly venomous. His hands carry the scars of his 16 years of experience, bitten over 20 times, but it was a bite from a king cobra that left him fighting for his life.
When I get bitten, I become more focused on trying to further understand and learn from snakes. When you work closely with them, the higher the chances of mishaps. These bites become knowledge I can use to teach other people.
The snakes rescued by firefighters are taken to a wildlife center and eventually released into the wild. And at this fire station, firefighting gear stack up on the shelves, waiting to be of use, next to the boxes and crates of live snakes, all caught in the past week. A fire station turned snake den, a job description which should now read full-time catching snakes, part-time extinguishing fires. Dusita Saogao, CGTN, Bangkok, Thailand.
The Chinese government stressed that local authorities in Wuhan were doing all they could to contain the virus. A foreign ministry spokesperson also said a special meeting World Health Organization involving a number of international parties would be held on Wednesday to assess the best way forward. CTN Wu Gaozhu has more from Beijing.
We have heard some latest explanations on the virus from China's leading epidemiologists. According to a high-level experts team set up by the National Health Commission, human-to-human transmission of the virus has been confirmed. Some medical staff have been infected. Experts say they identify the virus very quickly and it's not SARS, but it's still not known which animal it comes from. Most people are advised not to touch or eat wild animals.
This is the seventh type of coronavirus that affects people. We knew the other six, including SARS and MERS, which come from particular mammals. We completed the genome sequencing in a very short time. That means we know where its genes come from. We separated the virus. Its features show that the new virus is not SARS or MERS, but from their similarity, we deduce that wild animals have played a major function in it, so we traced it to animals.
Experts say there might be an increase of cases during the upcoming Spring Festival, but early discovery, diagnosis, treatment, and quarantine remain the most effective methods to bring the outbreak under control. Since almost all the reported cases are related to Wuhan, they advise that people should avoid going to Wuhan unless very necessary.
In this early phase, we must strengthen the prevention and control measures and let everyone know that. From a medical expert's point of view, we think the population movement during Chinese Lunar New Year is a very important factor. We hope people can avoid taking trips to Wuhan if possible, and I hope Wuhan residents avoid taking trips outside the city.
China's National Health Commission has added the new virus-linked pneumonia to its infectious disease prevention law. It's designated as a B-class infectious disease, the second category out of 3 classes, same as SARS and H1N1 bird flu. The health authority says although the virus is classified as B-class, it will implement prevention and control measures as if it were an A-class disease, which include plague and Corona. As part of law-based efforts to contain the virus, local governments, health authorities, and medical institutes can quarantine infected patients and people they have close contact with. And medical institutions and people are told to report cases as soon as possible. Also, on the border areas, the Frontier Health and Quarantine Law rules infectious disease checkups in ports, airports, land and river exit and entry points that target that people either come in or out of China. Actually, China's been doing that already for years. There are fewer monitors at airport customs, and in Wuhan, there are new monitoring machines to check if passengers get fever very quickly. And this comes after President Xi Jinping said people's safety and health should be the top priority to curb the spread.
Phase 1 of the China-US trade agreement is finally over the line as Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and US President Donald Trump made it official by signing their names on the document. Let's take a look.
Phase 1 of the China-U.S. trade agreement is finally over the line. Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and U.S. President Donald Trump made it official by penning their names to the document. Liu, China's chief negotiator, said the Americans and Chinese are determined to find a way forward. The U.S. held its advantages, saying it would promote economic growth as well as world peace and prosperity. On Thursday, a day after the signing, Trump tweeted, "The farmers are really happy with the new trade deal." Under the agreement, China will boost its purchases of American goods and services by $200 billion over the next 2 years. About 1/6 will be American agriculture products. Meanwhile, the U.S. president agreed to scrap plans to impose tariffs on $160 billion worth of Chinese goods. While Beijing welcomed the deal, it warned it must be carried out in full.
It is imperative that both parties work together, uphold the principles of equality and mutual respect, strictly abide by the agreement, address each other's core concerns, and work hard to implement the Phase 1 agreement, which plays an important role in the future development of China-U.S. economic and trade relations.
The two sides also agreed upon a framework which aims to prevent a similar trade deadlock in the future. Meanwhile, many in the international community have been hailing the pact.
The signing of the Phase 1 economic trade agreement between China and the United States will start to reduce the uncertainties that have long seriously affected the world economy.
Negotiations for Phase 2 are set to start immediately, but it's widely thought they won't be completed until after the U.S. presidential election in November.
This is Asia Outlook, broadcasting from Myanmar International Radio. You can visit our website at mradio.com.mm. You can also listen to our radio programs live on the website. Ahead of the Chinese Spring Festival, Chinese President Xi Jinping made an inspection tour of the southwest China's Yunnan province. He paid a visit on Monday to the wetland of Dianqi Lake in Kunming, the province capital city, where he observed the protection and management of the lake. India's top court has decided against blocking the implementation of a new citizenship law, but it has asked the government to respond to petitions that were filed against the validity of the controversial legislation. The law provides a fast track to naturalization for some migrants entering the country illegally to escape religious persecution. It has sparked widespread opposition and protests across the country, largely because it excludes Muslims. CGTN Ravina Bawa has more about the public's reaction from Delhi.
Its judgment, of course, people were hoping that the court is going to put a stay or put this law on hold, which did not happen, and the petitioners are disappointed. There were about 144 petitions in the Supreme Court today, which were clutched together, and the court was listening to that. Of course, the court has given 1 more month's time to the government, who had sought about 6 weeks, because the government's argument was that initially there were 60 petitions, but some more were added to this whole clutch of petitions, so they would need more time to respond to that, and this is what the Supreme Court has granted, because they have earlier in this month had said that they are here to judge the validity of the law, not the constitutionality, and that's why they have given this time to the government, which has come as a disappointment for a number of petitioners, a number of protesters. Since day one of this announcement, there have been protests, and over the last 1 month, the protests have galvanized into bigger movements, like the very initial reaction here in Delhi from the epicenter of all protests, which is Shaheen Bagh, where all these women, Muslim women and other people are leading this protest. They actually said that they are not going to give away their protest. They are going to intensify their protests in the wake of this Supreme Court judgment which came today, and they are now working towards, galvanizing more people and for more people to join this cause. Let's hear what some of the protesters had to say. Why are they protesting across the country and across various ages?
I'm also a mother. Ask those mothers who have lost their children to police brutality. What have they done to my country? Is this India? Will we give proof of being Indians?
This protest is important because our government, the government that we have elected, has now reached the stage where it is questioning us on our own identity.
We have no problem that they are giving citizenship to other communities, but they cannot violate the Section 14A of the Constitution and discriminate against Muslims. They should add Muslim immigrants to the list.
At the end of the day, this certain kind, this 1% makes the decision for the rest of the 99% available in this society. So I believe that we as the majority who are there right now should protest, should think for the society, and it's time that we come out of our houses and dissent what government is doing.
So you see, it's not just the Muslim people, it's people across the country who believe in a secular India, who believe in the oneness of India, have joined these movements. Although this judgment of today's Supreme Court was actually welcomed by a lot of pro-CAA, that is the Citizen Amendment Act, the people have supported that and they have welcomed this judgment. Of course, the ruling party has also welcomed this judgment, that the court has given time for the government to respond. So there is a mixed reaction, but definitely one thing is for sure, that this citizenship mess is going to continue for another month and we'll see more protests. Wang Wang Wang.
Plastics are disrupting the marine ecosystem, but as concern grows about plastic pollution in the seas, the impact on primary producers who contribute a big part of the world's oxygen is overlooked. CGTN Tony Cheng has more.
The plastic-infested coastal waters of Southeast Asia are a serious threat to large marine mammals. Plastic bags are easily sucked in by whales as they swallow ocean water in the search for krill. This whale threw up plastic bags for days until it died, an autopsy revealing 8 kilograms of plastic waste in its stomach. But tragic as these images are, researchers are now concerned about the impact of plastic pollution at the other end of the scale. Microplastics that have broken down into tiny fragments in the sea appear to be having an adverse impact on tiny organisms like plankton and marine algae.
One thing that's overlooked quite a lot with regards to the ecological system as a whole is impacts on primary producers. So something that is at a lower level, that they're not the big fluffy things that people kind of care about on an emotional level, but primary producers in the ocean like microalgae, which produce a third of the world's oxygen.
At the Marine Laboratory in Plymouth, they've been examining exactly what that plastic is doing to these tiny organisms. Under the microscope, you can see the illuminated bits of plastic that block the digestive systems and stop the plankton reproducing. That could be a disaster for animals higher up the food chain that feed on plankton, and for us.
They also play a really important role in the carbon cycle. So that phytoplankton, again being very small, but can absorb 50% of the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
Ocean-based phytoplankton are far more important to the oxygen cycle than all the forests on land combined. And with hundreds of tons of microplastics floating in the world's oceans, they're being choked. One of the real concerns about microplastics in the seas is not just for the animals that are consuming it, but also for the plant life, that the plastics are disrupting the whole ecology of the marine ecosystem, not just for seaweeds like this, but also for planktons out at sea. As concerns grow about plastic pollution in the seas, the impact on marine algae is easily overlooked. But if it leads to a sharp decline in global oxygen levels, it may have the greatest impact of all. Tony Cheng, CGTN.
Iraqi officials say 3 rockets had fallen near the U.S. embassy in the heavily fortified Green Zone in central Baghdad on Monday. The attack took place around midnight and no casualties have been reported so far. The Green Zone also houses some of the country's main government offices, and it has long been the target of mortar and rocket attacks from insurgents. Nobody has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. It comes amid regional tensions caused by Washington's assassination of Iran's top general earlier this month. 6 people, including 2 police officers, were also killed in anti-protests on Monday. The founder of South Korean retail giant Lotte Group, Shin Kyung-ho, died at the age of 99. The group said in a statement that Shin died at about 4:30 p.m. local time at a hospital in eastern Seoul of a chronic illness. Lotte started as a small chewing gum manufacturer in Japan in the 1940s, and it's now South Korea's 5th largest conglomerate with business interests in South Korea and Japan, ranging from retails and hotels and entertainment and even chemicals. Shin outlived the founders of South Korea's other top conglomerates, Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and SK. Not everyone traveling long distances on China's high-speed trains are headed home for the Chinese New Year, which falls on Saturday. With a shortage of workers both before and during the holiday, wages are often higher in China's big cities. So some decide to put in extra time, and thanks to 2 newly opened rail lines, one special group of women is able to earn more to provide for their families.
2 more high-speed rail lines added to China's ever-expansive network. December 30th saw the maiden voyages of both the Beijing-Zhangjiakou high-speed rail line and the Datong-Zhangjiakou line. Travel time between Beijing and the city of Datong has since been shortened from 6 hours to less than 2. At the Tianjin County stop in Datong, more than 100 female workers were getting on the new train heading to Beijing, where they often work as nannies. Many people call them the Tianjin nannies. Like many other big cities, Beijing is often short of laborers before and during the Spring Festival. But the Tianjin nannies are willing to go to Beijing at this time, since wages are much higher.
My biggest hope for this trip to Beijing is to earn more money. With this ride to Beijing taking just over an hour, it's really fast and convenient.
46-year-old Ren Shuming is heading to work in Beijing for the first time. With her 2 daughters in school, she says the extra money helps.
One daughter is in college and the other is in high school. Our budget is tight, so I choose to work as a nanny in Beijing, which brings me higher wages.
Ren is among tens of thousands of Tianjin nannies who receive professional training and go to work in Beijing every year. Tianjin is a severely poverty-stricken county of Datong in northern China's Shanxi province. In recent years, its labor export business has helped many villagers get out of poverty. And Tianjin Nanny has also become a brand name of a local labor business.
Now, the newly opened high-speed railways in northern China make it much easier for migrant workers to travel, not only from Shanxi province, but also Hebei province and Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. Hu Chao, CGTN, Shanxi province.
This is Asia Outlook broadcasting from Myanmar International Radio. On FM, make sure you catch us on 96.1 FM in Yangon, 96.5 in Mandalay, and 96.7 in Naypyidaw. You can also download MI Radio app on both iOS and Android devices for your own convenience. Leaders from dozens of countries are gathering in Jerusalem, Israel, to mark the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Russian President Vladimir Putin have arrived. The high-profile guest list also includes French President Emmanuel Macron and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. But Poland's president will not be attending. Chinese New Year is one of the biggest holidays in Malaysia, with at least a quarter of the population being ethnic Chinese. It's celebrated with lion dances, family reunions, lots of shopping, and music. Songs dedicated to the Spring Festival are released every year to tap into the festive spirit.
It's become almost as much a part of the Lunar New Year tradition in Malaysia as lanterns and lion dancing. New music released for the festival. Veteran singer Winnie Kay has been performing in public since she was a kid.
And I have 5 solo albums, 12 compilations, and previously I have my Chinese New Year album with other artists, but I never have my own Chinese New Year album.
Until this year. With brick and mortar music shops having all but disappeared from Malaysian high streets and shopping malls, artists have to find other ways to make sure their Chinese New Year releases reach the public. To accompany the album, Winnie Kay has produced several videos distributed via social as well as physical media.
Yes, I know a lot of people, they like to hear a very traditional music. Me as a musician or singer, I have to do something different, and I implemented some new concepts. So I have not just singing, I have a bit of rap. So I have Chinese, very trendy and also traditional combined together.
Local Chinese language TV station 8TV has made it a tradition to release an original New Year's song each year, featuring their on-screen talent. This year's theme, Keep Smiling.
My first time joining as a singer to sing the Chinese New Year song, I was very nervous, but at the same time very happy as well, because I know that I'm going to bring the joy to people around me, to people who listen to the song.
And that's what it's really all about, spreading festive joy. And if it helps raise the artists' profiles and popularities in the process, well, that's a New Year's bonus. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
Economist Anthony Chen discusses day one at World Economic Forum in Davos.
About how good and strong the U.S. economy is. This is the longest running economic expansion practice. But the reality is that economic growth is slowing down. We grew 2 years ago at 2.9%, last year in 2019 at 2.3%, and this year we'll probably grow less than 2%. So we are slowing down. The Chinese economy also slowed down because of these trade tensions. So the reality is a little different. These trade tensions probably subtracted as much as 0.2% off economic growth in the United States, perhaps a little bit more in China.
What impact, though, that being said, with this Phase 1 deal, that the timing of the signing last week coming into Davos, what impact will that have as international leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs listen and try to make deals this week?
Well, I think it's a very positive message because it's...
Australian officials say all 3 firefighters aboard a water-bombing jet are dead after the plane crashed on Thursday. It was battling massive bushfires in the state of New South Wales. Earlier, CGTN correspondent in Sydney, Greg Navarro, gave us the details.
3 firefighters has been confirmed by the Rural Fire Service of New South Wales. Just a short time ago, on board that plane, they have died as a result of the crash that you mentioned. They were aboard a Lockheed C-130 Hercules air tanker. It's basically a water bomber that was working a huge fire in the Snowy Mountain region of New South Wales. Contact was lost with that aircraft earlier this afternoon. Reports suggest that radar showed that it stopped south of Canberra. A number of aircraft were diverted to the area. Remember, they were all in that region fighting this massive fire. They began the search for the plane. Very difficult terrain, we're told, in that region. To locate it, witnesses at some point reported that they saw a huge fireball when the plane apparently went down. Only the tail section, we're told, of that plane remains intact. The rest of the aircraft broke upon impact. We don't know what caused the crash at this point. Again, all 3 firefighters on board were killed in the crash. All 3 very well-respected, widely known firefighters with decades of experience. And as you can imagine, it is an extremely difficult time for firefighters and the Rural Fire Service at this hour.
The World Health Organization says a viral illness in China that has sickened hundreds of people is not yet a global health emergency. Let's take a listen.
I'm not declaring a public health emergency of international concern
today. For the moment, WHO does not recommend any broader restrictions on travel or trade.
The emergency committee members, which I thank for their work, were very divided, almost 50-50, and they continued today to be in the same division. Several were reinforced in their idea that it should be considered as a fake, considering the evolution of the epidemic, some increase in the number of cases, in the severity of the disease. But several others say that it is too early because of limited number of cases abroad, and also considering the efforts which are presently made by Chinese authorities in order to try to contain the disease.
And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MR Radio. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Until next time.